The free-to-play Outriders demo is here with the full game coming out on April 1st. I gave it a whirl and enjoyed it. Yeah, there's no PvP, but being able to play with your friends is a lot of fun, and the abilities are kinda wacky. But for first-time players, which is pretty much everybody at this point, you got a pretty big question to answer right out of the gate. What class should you play? Hi, my name is Fallout, and do me a favor, would you? If you end up liking today's video, let me know by clicking the like button, and remember to subscribe for more. Today, I'm gonna cover the basic info on each of the 4 classes in Outriders based on both what we had access to in the demo and what I was able to dig up online. I'll try to put timestamps down below in the video description, that way if you want to jump ahead to whatever class you want to hear about, you can do that. Starting off, we have the Devastator. If you're familiar with my coverage of Destiny or D2, try to think of the Devastator as a hybrid between a Titan and maybe an Earthbender from Avatar. Don't know what that is? I'm not angry, just disappointed. Devastator is one of 2 classes that are built around close quarters combat, with a backup specialty in being kinda thick and tanky. Their abilities are a mixture of offense and frontline defense. Real quick, why don't we go over those abilities? Your basic melee attack on the Devastator does bleed damage to anyone within the area of effect, meaning anyone tagged by your melee gets damage over time for a few seconds. It ain't wildly powerful, but any damage is good damage. The Devastator class trait is as follows. Every close range kill heals you by 24% of your maximum health, you get an extra 15% overall maximum health, and your armor goes up by 30%. Again, Devastator is a tank. If you like builds where you maybe spec a buttload of points into health and being strong, Devastator might be the play for you. On my Devastator in the demo, I was already putting points into the Warden tree, including beefing up my overall health by 10%, then putting a point into Anomaly in Veins, regen your health 1% every second. I want to be a beefy boy with a lot of health. Skill-wise, here's what we got. Your default ability is Earthquake, which does 2 things. 1, it does big damage in a straight line, which, yeah, can hit multiple people. And thing number 2, it works as an interrupt. So any boss or mini-boss charging up an ability will get interrupted by Earthquake. Rock solid ability. Didn't plan that, leaving it in. And remember that it can go through walls. Next we got Golem. When activated, you cover yourself with a bunch of rocks and protect yourself against 65% of all incoming damage for 8 seconds. Definitely not a bad ability, considering you're meant to be played on the front line. Next up, we have Gravity Leap. Very fun ability. Activate it and you'll fly up into the air with an option to either cancel the ability or come crashing down on any enemy within the attack's range, dealing big damage and acting as an interrupt. There were actually a couple times I used Gravity Leap as just a way to get my feet off the floor and avoid a certain attack before either canceling and returning to the fight or dive bombing some random schmuck. Next we have Reflect Bullets. Reminded me a lot of Titanfall. You put up your hand and for the next 10 seconds you become Keanu Reeves. You catch all the bullets headed your way, and after the full 10 seconds, or earlier if you want to, throw all that damage back in the face of any enemy right in front of you. Great for both giving yourself a breather in a hot firefight and for close range crowd control, because PvE enemies are stupid. They're not going to stop shooting at you even though you're blatantly about to ruin their day. The other abilities we weren't able to unlock yet in the demo, but here's what I dug up online. Impale. Pick one target within range and a gigantic stalagmite comes up out of the ground and impales that person. It's an interrupt, it deals regular damage and bleed damage. If the enemy dies to the attack, you create a zone that gives a bonus to armor and health regen to any ally within range for 9 seconds. Great ability on paper. Interrupt attacks are a big deal, and even though Earthquake is good, it has travel time as it goes along the ground. Impale is ranged, kinda, and immediate. The potential heal zone on a kill is also icing on the cake, and plays into the role of the Devastator being a chunky boy. Next, we got Endless Mass, a power featured on the Outrider YouTube channel. Summon a big rock, which apparently acts like a tiny black hole. Destiny people, you're literally making a Duskfield nade, except with rocks. Any enemy nearby gets sucked into the middle and also gets bleed damage. Awesome ability, feel like a lot of Devastators are going to take advantage of. Pull everybody in tight, then use a different ability like Gravity Leap to completely annihilate the entire group. or you could let a teammate finish with one of their abilities. The next two powers I've seen conflicting info on, but I'm going with the info obtained from the Fandom Outriders wiki, which does seem in line with the ability images from the Outriders YouTube channel. Final ability number 1, Tremor, create a series of explosions around you, each dealing damage and draining health from enemies within a medium radius around you. And final ability number 2, Boulder Dash, charge forward to interrupt all enemies in your path and deal damage. At the end of the charge, you bash the ground and deal damage to all enemies in a small radius around you. Here's my thoughts on the Devastator after taking it to max level in the demo. The Devastator, at least in the beginning, isn't as great at 1v1ing big bad boss enemies, but is great at crowd control. Bashing through clumps of people was easy as hell, and I did feel very tanky when playing the Devastator. I think if you hate the idea of sitting back and using long-range weapons, and you like the thought of getting up close, having a lot of health, and being a good crowd control type player, pick Devastator. Alright, now let's talk about the second class, the Technomancer. If you're more down with long-range combat and team support, this might be the one for you. Your melee ability is great. Any enemy in the damage radius gets frozen. I know Technomancer was meant to play back, but if you're in a situation where you get charged, damn, the default melee is really fun. As many of us here probably learned from D2, the ability to freeze enemies is good. As a Technomancer, you will recover a portion of the damage you deal as health. Your long-range weapons have 15% more damage, and your skill and weapon leech go up by 15%. All in all, Technomancer is a class that benefits a lot from hanging out in the back of the fight. Skill-wise, let's go through everything we know. Your default ability is a proximity mine that you gently lob out in front of you. Enemies that trigger the mine take big damage and get interrupted if they're charging an attack. Not a bad ability, can be used offensively or defensively. Next up, we have one that you're gonna abuse a lot. Cryo Turret. Drop an automated turret onto the floor that both shoots enemies for damage and freezes them. The turret will lose health over time naturally, or if it takes damage directly. Really, this ability is your go-to. Dropping it on the field is one more thing for your enemies to focus on that isn't you, and I found myself using it constantly. Dealing damage with it is fine, but the fact that you can freeze people with it is wild. Near the end of the demo, there's a boss fight where you take on an altered who has weird electric powers. The first time I played him alone, on a different character, I had a little bit of trouble. Later, when I 1v1'd him as a Technomancer, the cryo turret put in a ton of work by freezing him in place, and it made the whole fight so much easier. It might not be the best method for nuking big bad boss enemies, more on that later, but again, freezing people, really good. Next we have Pain Launcher. You drop a launcher on the ground and missile a wide area out in front of you, kind of like a carpet bomb. The launcher does a lot of damage, covers much more ground than I thought it would, and each missile can apparently interrupt on top of dealing big damage. The cooldown is kind of long for the Pain Launcher, 40 seconds, but damn, does it hit really hard. Next we have Blighted Rounds. Activate it and fill your weapon mag with bullets that deal toxic damage. Enemies within a small radius of the main target also get toxic, and 50% of the damage. The only drawback is that the toxic bullets will end when you either reload or swap your weapon. Considering the Technomancer benefits from ranged combat, this is a really good thing to pair with a large mag sniper rifle. Fighting a big boss level enemy, freeze him with your turret, activate Blighted Rounds, and go for the head. You can also pair it together with a big ass LMG because again, the extra damage doesn't go away until you reload. The next ability confirmed on the Outriders YouTube channel is Tool of Destruction. You pretty much summon a high powered weapon out of thin air. Think Golden Gun for the Hunter in D2, but you get to choose one of two different weapons. If you tap the button, you get a rocket launcher, which also has the ability to interrupt enemies on a hit, and if you hold the button down, you get a machine gun. Pretty straightforward. The power of that ability is going to depend on how strong the gun you conjure actually is. Considering a lot of endgame weapons in Outriders are wildly powerful, I don't know how keen I'm going to be on putting on a different, more basic weapon in my hand. I'd probably rather use just a different ability to power up my already good weapon. Anyway, moving on, next we have Fixing Wave, a healing power. Activate it and restore 33% of health to all players and 50% of health to your turrets regardless of how far away they are. That is a crazy strong ability, and the only direct healing power I could find on any of the 4 classes. I feel like a lot of people who enjoy playing healers or support characters are immediately going to be drawn to Technomancer based on that power alone. Yeah, every class in the game can self-heal to a degree, but Technomancer is health on demand with no strings attached. Next, we got Blighted Turret. Much like the original Cryo Turret, Blighted Turret lets you drop a turret on the ground that sprays toxic liquid, I guess, onto enemies. I don't know at this time if you can do both a blighted turret and a cryo turret at the same time. I would imagine that you should be able to. If you can, that would be a lot of fun. Drop 2 turrets together and litter the battlefield with random bullcrap. Finally, we have Cold Snap. Even though we don't have our hands on it yet, this looks like a dummy good ability. Drop a little gadget right in front of you and everyone in the nearby area becomes immediately frozen. Very straightforward, but it looks damned effective. The Technomancer is designed to fight from afar, yeah, but there are always going to be situations where enemies manage to get close to you. I can also see this ability being great on big bad bosses who you want to lock down briefly for big team damage. Overall thoughts on the Technomancer after getting mine to max level in the demo. You're gonna want to play Technomancer if any of the following appeals to you: freezing people, healing people, shooting people from the back with a sniper rifle, or all of the above. It might not be very flashy, but Technomancer is a lot of fun. Your friends will appreciate the healing, and freezing people is awesome. Moving on, we have class number 3 out of 4, the Pyromancer. According to the in-game text, the Pyro does best at medium range. As you can probably imagine, the Pyro is all about fire and burning people. Their basic melee does damage and will burn enemies for a little damage over time, which is important. I'll get to that in a minute. As a Pyro, you get the following unique benefits. You'll recover health whenever enemies marked by your abilities are killed. What does that mean? Well, any enemy that you tag with a skill becomes marked for 15 seconds. Killing a marked enemy heals you by 24% of your maximum health. Not too shabby. Also, you get an extra 10% anomaly power thrown in on top. Really, your goal as a Pyromancer should be to tag as many enemies as you can with your fire abilities, because again, any marked enemy who dies means more health for you. Let's talk about your skills. First up, we have Heat Wave, your most basic ability. You pretty much create a wave of fire on the ground that launches out in front of you. Like the Devastator, Heat Wave can go literally through walls and kill enemies hiding behind cover. Enemies tagged by your fire will take damage directly, and they will burn, aka take damage over time, and remember, they get marked. Anybody you hit with your fire is marked for 15 seconds, and if they die, you get healed. Next, we have Feed the Flames. This ability isn't really that powerful, but it's damned handy. You pick any one enemy, even if they're hiding behind cover, and you directly pull them up out of cover. They take damage, you take a portion of their health right away as healing, and you completely immobilize them for a few seconds. Feed the Flames is great for either pulling a hiding enemy out of cover for a free headshot or locking down a big bad enemy briefly for you and your friends to wail on. Next up, we have Thermal Bomb. Pick an enemy to burn within range, they take damage and get interrupted. If the target is killed while affected by Thermal Bomb, they explode, dealing big damage in a large radius. Not a bad ability, but it kind of annoyed me that it was the only one so far to cause interrupt on the Pyro tree. Interrupt abilities are usually held onto for stronger enemies with charge-up attacks, and Thermal Bomb by nature kind of makes you want to tag any low health enemy in a big clump so you can make a big explosion. So it kind of works against itself, but still not a bad ability. Next up, we got Overheat. Deal damage to all enemies within a large radius and cause interrupt. Enemies afflicted with burn get damage instead, and the burn will be consumed. You can use Overheat to either interrupt enemies if you're up close, or if you just want to deal big damage, use it if they're already burning. So either tag enemies with Heat Wave or your default melee to get them burning, then finish them off with Overheat. Next, we have Ash Blast. This ability is pretty much a fiery version of the Technomancer Cold Snap. You create a small blast around you, and anyone nearby gets afflicted with ash, aka they become immobilized. Very straightforward ability, but I imagine it'll be incredibly powerful. Being able to lock down groups of enemies or lock down a big boss enemy is awesome, no matter how you look at it. Next up, we got Volcanic Rounds. Fill your weapon mag with bullets that inflict burn within a small small radius and pierce through targets, damaging enemies behind them. The skill will last until you reload or switch weapons. Very much like the Technomancer ability Blighted Rounds. I think it makes a bit more sense for the Pyromancer though, because remember, any enemy you mark via burning means more health for you when they die. You can burn enemies with your bullets, then gank their health when they go down, and you can pair that together with Overheat, which if you remember, does big damage to any enemy around you who is already burning. Next, according to what I read online, we have Phaser Beam. Fire an energy beam that deals damage that benefits from 125% of status power, inflicting burn and causing interrupt. I'm not gonna lie, the wording on that ability is kind of weird, and there's no footage to look at so far. I imagine Phaser Beam will be able to do big damage to a single target, so kind of combine that with the fact that it can interrupt, and we're probably looking at a great way to deal damage to a boss. Finally, we have Eruption. Create a volcanic eruption beneath a targeted enemy, dealing damage to them and all enemies within a small radius around the target. Again, sounds pretty good on paper, no footage to watch as of right now. Just another way to spread your fire around, create a burn effect, which equals more healing for you in the long run. I think if you don't really want to hang out at the very back of the map like the Technomancer, but you don't want to completely be on the front line like Devastator or Trickster, you should probably go Pyromancer. It does play really well at mid-range, and burning people is fun. I think the Ash Blast is going to be crazy powerful, and between that and Feed the Flames, you have two direct methods of completely immobilizing an enemy. If all that sounds really good to you, or if you just want to burn people, I guess go Pyromancer. Finally, we have the Trickster. Now, I'm gonna be real with you. I think that right now on paper, Trickster might be one of, if not the strongest classes in the game. Like the Devastator, the Trickster is designed for up-close combat. However, where the Devastator is kind of a beefy tank, the Trickster is more of a wacky ability abuse, hit and run style combat. Your basic melee does damage and inflicts slow to all enemies in a small radius. You gain the following from being a Trickster. Each enemy killed at close range heals you and gives you a portion of shield. You get an extra 5% to your max health, and active shield gives 5% damage mitigation. Every close range kill heals you by 20% of your maximum health and grants you 12% shield. So while you're not naturally as beefy as the Devastator, Trickster encourages you to get up close to kill, and then when you do, you get a little health and a little shield in return. Their abilities are as follows. First, Temporal Blade. You make a huge outward cut with a glowing blade, and anyone touched by that blade takes big damage, gets slowed down, and gets interrupted. Great base level ability. Like others we've covered, Temporal Blade can go through walls and hit enemies hiding behind cover. Top shelf, very good ability. Next up, we have Slow Trap. Create a space-time anomaly sphere. Translation: you make a bubble on you, and anyone or anything in that bubble becomes way slowed down. Enemies shooting into the bubble are going to have a hard time getting you because the bullets in the bubble move at a glacial pace. The bubble sticks around for 10 seconds, which doesn't sound like a lot, but believe me, it is. I've used Slow Trap on big enemies point blank, and then spent 10 full seconds completely unloading max damage into their dumb head. Slow Trap is a very good ability and naturally has a fairly long cooldown, 31 seconds. Next up, we got Hunt the Prey. You pretty much teleport behind an enemy within range and get a 38 shield bonus by doing so. Great for closing the gap and getting you right into the fray, and the shield bonus is a great add-on. Not an OP ability, but again, good for closing the gap. Next, we got Twisted Rounds. Fill your weapon mag with bullets that beef up your firepower by a lot. The extra damage will remain until you reload or swap your weapon. Twisted Rounds combined with Slow Trap equals wow, immediately make any boss have a terrible day. Drop a bubble on them point blank, beef up your mag, and unload into their dome. Insanely powerful combo, and wow, have I had fun doing it. Said it before, and I'll say it again. Bending time and space is pretty goddamn strong. Next up, Borrowed Time. Activating it immediately gives you a percentage of your maximum health as a shield that absorbs damage before your health becomes affected. In addition to that, you make a time clone of yourself wherever on the map you activated the ability. Activating the ability a second time will allow you to teleport back to safety wherever you dropped your time clone. Complicated ability, but it's going to be great. You could, in theory, use it to quickly run into a hot zone, drop a slow trap bubble on a big threatening enemy for your buddies to shoot, then teleport back to safety. The following abilities we don't have footage of, but have been dug up online. Cyclone Slice. Create a whirlwind of anomaly blades that deal damage and interrupt onto enemies within a small radius of you with every hit. Lasts about 5 seconds. Not bad if you have multiple enemies nearby who you want to deal interrupt to. Next up, Venator's Knife. Throw a temporal knife at an enemy. The blade will ricochet between a maximum of 5 people within a small radius, dealing damage and marking them. All marked targets will be inflicted with slow, and for 10 seconds the first damage dealt by you will be doubled. Slowing down multiple enemies and being able to deal double damage sounds very good. Gonna need to try that one out, but very strong on paper right now. Finally, we have Time Rift. Create a shockwave that suspends enemies in the air, leaving them unable to fight for 3.5 seconds, and inflicts weakness. Sounds pretty good. I'd need to see exactly how far out the shockwave goes, but any ability to literally immobilize enemies and make them weak sounds good. That's pretty much the Trickster in a nutshell. Again, they like to fight up close, but whereas the Devastator is an up-close tank, the Trickster seems like the class to both dish out heavy damage and set up big debuffs for the rest of the team. I feel like out of every class I've played so far, Trickster might be the most broken, but who knows. We've really only been able to scratch the surface of a free-to-play demo. If you like the idea of bending time and reality, immobilizing enemies, teleporting, and fighting up close, definitely check out the Trickster. And there you have it, hopefully a very straightforward breakdown of each of the 4 playable classes in Outriders. I'm having a bunch of fun with the demo, hope you are too, and let me know down in the comments section what class you've had the most fun playing with and why. Please like and subscribe and help me with my oh so humble goal of becoming the sole ruler of the world. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.